Well, great. All right. Well, good. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for being here. My name is Mark Graban. People often ask, sometimes with a smile, so what do you do? Yeah. What do you do? So real quick in terms of my background, I'm an industrial engineer. I worked in manufacturing for the first 10 years of my career. For about the last 8.5, I've focused on healthcare. So I do consulting and other disreputable things through my own company, Constancy Inc. I work as part of the team at a startup software company called KaiNexus, which you may see, Kaizen, KaiNexus. We see the connections here. And I've written some books, which sometimes people think, if you've written books, you can get up in front of an audience and speak. And I don't know if that's always a good assumption, but no, they're probably counterindicated. But we'll give this a shot anyway. So I'm going to try to be provocative in a friendly way on this theme of creating a culture of continuous improvement. And to ask ourselves to reflect, and I try to do this myself, are we making excuses or are we solving problems when we talk about creating this culture? Now, we might recognize this in other industries. We might recognize it within our own industry, our own organization. We might recognize it if we look in the mirror and say, when we're facing challenges about creating this culture of continuous improvement, how are we reacting? What are we doing about it? So one thing just to level set, when I use the word Kaizen, I'm taking a pretty direct translation from Japanese. The word, as I've been taught, it does not translate to mean week-long, team-based project with a sensei being involved. It really just means good change or improvement. So we think about how do we create a culture of continuous improvement? How do we get people engaged in this process? So when we work with people in hospitals and we ask them, what problems are you facing in your daily work? What can we do better? Here's an example from a hospital where a nurse very quickly pointed out, our patients who are nauseous ask us for ginger ale. And we don't have ginger ale stocked in our unit. And we have to run upstairs to go get it, or we tell the patient, sorry, you're out of luck, just lay there and be nauseous. Well, their idea was a pretty simple one, and it might sound sacrilege, but you don't always have to do root cause analysis. This was a simple just do it. Could somebody please help us get ginger ale stocked on the unit? Why? Because it would help our patients. We would waste less time. A manager made a simple call to nutrition services, and the next day they started stocking 2 cans of ginger ale. So we'd say, if we look at this type of improvement on a PDSA cycle, hundreds, if not thousands, of small improvements being made in an organization, why don't we have this happening more often? My co-author's health system in Indianapolis has implemented and documented 4,000 small Kaizen improvements each of the last 4 years, and they keep going. They have a culture of continuous improvement, or at least they're working there. It's really easy to go to hospital websites and see mission, vision, and value statements that talk about either we have a culture of continuous improvement, or we strive for it, or we're working at it. But when you actually talk to people, I had to get an MRI done, and there was a big sign in the lobby that said, we are a culture of continuous innovation and continuous improvement. And I asked the woman at the front desk about this, and she just rolled her eyes at me. She didn't know what that was about. So we have to ask, if organizations are talking the talk, are we walking the walk? Are we living up to that statement on the website or on the sign in the lobby? Are we really living this day to day? Because I think if organizations were being honest, sometimes their statement might say this: we'd like to have a culture of continuous improvement, but our workers have been beaten down, our leaders don't trust them anyway, and we don't make time for improvement. So it's a nice idea, but honestly not a priority for us right now. We'll get there someday, or probably not. So as we learn good lean problem solving, and we might want to look maybe less cynically than this, at the reality of our culture. Is there a gap? Mind the gap. Can we honestly say there's a gap between today's culture and where we would like to be? If there's agreement that there's a gap, we can ask why, using another good lean mindset. Why is there a gap? Why do we not have everybody participating in continuous improvement? My co-author's health system measures each year. They have about 36% of their employees who contribute and implement and document at least one Kaizen improvement. And to their credit, they don't blame or look down upon the 64% who aren't participating. They're asking why. Why are they not? What can we do as leaders to get them engaged? What can we do to get them involved? So they might identify barriers. We dedicated a whole page in our book to a laundry list of barriers to continuous improvement. We don't have time. Our senior leaders aren't on board. We don't have connection to our metrics. We don't have the budget. There's a laundry list of things we can look at and say, well, are we identifying barriers? Or maybe we're erecting barriers based on our policies and what we're doing every day. I think the question to ask is, well, are we making excuses from these barriers, or are we solving problems? I think there's a very funnel mindset here when we've identified a barrier to not give up and quit, but to think, all right, team, what are we going to do about it? Let's solve that problem. So let's apply Kaizen thinking to some of these gaps, to some of these problem statements. Problem, staff don't have time to do Kaizen. If we're in excuse-making mode, yeah, you're right. We don't have time. Forget that continuous improvement business. We don't want to give up because that's an excuse. We say, well, what can we do about that? We can ask our team members. We can ask our leaders. What can we do to solve that problem? One very simple thing is to schedule time to work on Kaizen. I live in San Antonio, and we're very fortunate to have a Toyota plant that lets people come through and do tours. We bring medical students and MHA students to come visit the plant. They see the words Kaizen all over the place. And when these future healthcare leaders ask, well, everyone's busy building trucks, it seems. When do you do Kaizen? The frontline staff member who's giving the tour says, well, you know what? If we have an idea, we talk to our manager. If it's a good idea, they schedule time to make that happen. Now, you might think, well, we don't have the budget for that. Well, is that an excuse, or is that a problem that we can solve? I know managers who will actually schedule time after they've done Kaizen events and improved productivity to schedule time. Today, you're going to come in and work on Kaizen to 2 staff members. They solve that problem instead of making an excuse. Managers will say, I don't have time to help with Kaizen. Well, is that an excuse that makes us give up, or is it a problem that we solve? What can we do about that? For one, managers sometimes have the wrong mindset that Kaizen is employees giving you ideas to go and investigate and implement. Well, no, we can delegate and empower our team members. We can solve that problem. We can cancel that stupid 9 o'clock meeting that doesn't really have any purpose anymore. That's just become a habit. We can free up time. We can solve that problem. I think one of the most interesting barriers that I've run across was people saying, well, working on Kaizen hurts our productivity numbers. That we have a daily productivity target that we have to hit. And hitting that daily productivity target is ironically the biggest barrier to improving productivity. So what can we do about that? We could blame senior leaders for not being enlightened. We could make excuses. We could give up. Or maybe we embrace that as a problem to solve. Maybe we educate our leaders about longer-term measures or a more balanced set of measures and say, hey, don't micromanage my daily productivity. Let me do what I need to do to improve productivity over time. Maybe that's the better thing to be rewarded. Maybe we can have a charge code where if we assign time for Kaizen, it doesn't hurt your department's productivity. That might be a short-term countermeasure, maybe not a habit we don't want to develop forever, but it's a way we can solve that problem. So I've heard people in healthcare say, what we need for change in any type of setting, large or small, is both the will to do it, the will to create a culture of continuous improvement, some sort of ideas or methodology for, okay, well, gosh, how are we going to get from here to there? And then we need the execution and the discipline to actually go make it happen. So I see organizations that have that gap. It could be that they don't have a method. It could be that they're not executing that method in a disciplined way. Or sadly, it could be they're just paying lip service to it and they don't have the will to change their culture. They don't have the will to create that culture of continuous improvement. And so I think my question to everybody for reflection is to say, well, are we being a victim or are we being a leader? When we find barriers that prevent us from closing a gap, are we a victim who makes excuses or a leader who solves problems? And a final thought, the great nurse Florence Nightingale once said, I attribute my success to this. I never gave or took any excuse. I try to practice that same idea, and I hope all of us in this room would as well, or at least so we can go back to our organizations and be a bit of what I would call a friendly pest without jeopardizing your own paycheck or career. When you see people making excuses and hiding behind them, say, wait a minute, time out. Let's reframe that as a problem that we could solve. Thank you.